That's the wrong music.
Like, Daniel, you changed everything about the show.
Once Upon a Time is edgy now. Let me try with the right music this time. You're listening to Once, episode 255, season 5, disc review. Let me try that again.
Oh, it's going to be a long night.
No, it's just a long intro. Have faith. Make it so. Hope. 3, 2, 1. You're listening to Once Upon a Time. It's been too long since I've done this.
Did you guys do an unboxing video like a week ago?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
And that actually didn't have many bloopers, if any.
Wow.
All I know is your head looked really shiny.
Yeah,
really shiny.
I actually powder my head now since I have this light shining down to try and cut back on that reflection. Anyway, let's try this again. 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. You're listening to Once, episode 255, Once Upon a Time complete 5th season disc review. Welcome back to another episode of Once, the unofficial podcast for ABC's TV show Once Upon a Time. I'm Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Hunter Hathaway.
I'm Jacqueline.
And we have watched and rewatched the fun extras that came with the Once Upon a Time complete 5th season on DVD and Blu-ray. So we want to share with you some of our thoughts and review and some interesting little tidbits that we've discovered along the way with the commentaries, deleted scenes, bloopers, all of that. Now, if you want to watch our unboxing to see what this looks like, go to oncepodcast.com/S5unboxing. That's the letter S, number 5, unboxing. And that's the video that Jeremy and I did when we first received the Blu-ray set to be able to unbox it, show you what's inside, some of the cool things and imagery, and talk about it as it relates to the other cases. Now, the 5th season, overall, how did you feel, Hunter and Jacqueline, about the amount of content that we get with the 5th season?
I thought it was a lot.
Really? I thought it was actually significantly less. Because we only had 3 commentaries, and normally we have at least 5.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I was thinking more of like all the deleted scenes. I'm not a huge one for commentaries. I like watching all the deleted scenes and the little extras and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, the deleted scenes, they did have more deleted scenes in this season than in, I can't say for sure if it's been all of the past seasons, but certainly I believe season 4 had fewer deleted scenes. And I felt like the deleted scenes for this season were more meaningful deleted scenes. Like you got more good content in them than just, yeah, here's a scene we deleted, so we're throwing it out there so you can see what we deleted.
Right.
It is meaningful, but at the same time, it doesn't mean anything because they're no longer canon.
Yeah.
For those who missed it, Adam did tweet out that all the deleted scenes, not just season 5, but seasons 1 through 4, are no longer considered canon. So it's nice to see those, but like we can't factor it into any kind of analysis. And if it helped the timeline or anything, it no longer matters.
Which is a bummer because there's some really good stuff in the deleted scenes.
There is. I mean, a lot of it are these nice character moments where you kind of get to see the characters just talk one-on-one. That's always really nice. Or there are those occasions where, you know, we have pointed out some sort of discrepancy in the timeline or in canon, and suddenly it's like, oh, but this deleted scene actually answers all of that. But now we can't take it into consideration.
Right.
Because everything's out the window and they can do whatever they want now.
Now, we received the Blu-ray edition of this that has an exclusive bonus. One of those bonuses is a couple more deleted scenes. And it also says that one of the episodes of the audio commentary is a bonus to the Blu-ray version. But I feel like that would really be robbing the DVD purchasers because there are only 3 to begin with on the Blu-ray. So if DVD has only 2, then that's really being shortchanged. However, also the sticker on the outside of the case says Blu-ray exclusive bonus plus free inside one of the little collectible postcards. I don't believe those postcards are exclusive to the Blu-ray. I think they're just an extra bonus that you could get with either the DVD or the Blu-ray. But they are neat. There's greetings from the Underworld, greetings from Camelot, and greetings from Storybrooke postcards.
So now you have to keep buying them till you can collect all 3.
Right. Or watch eBay or Amazon. I'm sure someone will probably be selling them. Now, speaking of selling things and collectible things that you might want to get, I want to tell you that right now, when you're hearing this, if you listen to it immediately after we've published this episode, August 18th through Sunday, August 21st, there is a special sale going on T-shirts. These are fan-made T-shirts for Once Upon a Time. If you go to oncepodcast.com/T-shirts, you can check out our hand-selected T-shirt designs that we think you would really like and that would show your fandom. And they're on sale, a special sale only during these 4 days. They do these sales every now and then, but you can find T-shirts that have little cartoon drawings of some of your favorite characters from Once Upon a Time. There are T-shirts with icons that have the different things that are symbolic to particular characters. You could get the Sheriff Department, Storybrooke Sheriff Department logo on a T-shirt. There are all kinds of fun things. Of course, Captain Hook is on a T-shirt, and the Seven Dwarves are on T-shirts. All kinds of fun things that you, as a oncer, I think you've got to get these kinds of things. Like one of the T-shirts, in fact, says, "It's a oncer thing. You won't understand." There are also fun designs that are a little bit more based on the Disney idea of some of the fairy tale characters, but quotations from Once Upon a Time, like "Magic always comes with a price, dearie." There's a logo for Storybrooke Dark Ones. There are a lot of things for Captain Swan shippers, but also plenty of stuff for Evil Queen, Rumbell, a whole bunch of other stuff. One of my favorite T-shirts here is, "I just want to watch Once Upon a Time and ignore all my adult problems." Or if you really like all of the ships, there is a T-shirt that encapsulates the major ships. It has on it Captain Swan, Snowing, Outlaw Queen, and Rumbell. So check those out at oncepodcast.com/T-shirts. Those are always available, but they're on a special sale through August 21st, 2016 at oncepodcast.com/T-shirts. And when you purchase through that link, that does help support the podcast too. oncepodcast.com/T-shirts. Let's start our discussion with the commentaries for these episodes. Now, Aaron and Jeremy weren't able to be, let me say that differently. That was kind of Jeremy. Aaron wasn't able to join us for this discussion. Let me say that differently again. Because of scheduling conflicts, Aaron wasn't able to join us for this episode tonight, and also Jeremy was sick, so that's why he's not here. But Aaron and I did get a chance to watch and record our commentary on The Dark Swan, which is episode 501. The commentary is from Adam Horowitz, Eddie Kitsis, and Jennifer Morrison. We pre-recorded that, so I'm going to share that with you right now. And it plays. Then we're back. You can follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron J. Cruz, and that's Cruz with a Z at the end. And special thanks that she could participate in that review with me. Let's move on to episode 508, Birth.
Yes. This one was commentaried by David H. Goodman, Jerome Schwartz, and Colin O'Donoghue. It was actually really fun. So we learned a lot. I don't know if you guys watched this one.
Yeah, this one was actually already released several months ago. If you sign up for the season pass on iTunes, and there are some other ways that you can sometimes get this too, they did release this episode's commentary way back then, which I feel was cool, but yet kind of diminishes the value of buying the disc set a little bit. But that aside, it was some fun commentary.
Yeah. I mean, I thought they just kind of threw in lots of little things throughout the whole commentary that are like makes you think. About this, there was a snow globe detector in one of the scenes.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, so they walk into, I believe it's Gold's shop, and there's a snow globe sitting there, and it's supposed to detect when the Dark One comes in. And well, before we knew he was evil. And he was a Dark One, it started going off when Hook walks in.
Yeah, and this was something that they'd written in, and they had to cut some of this stuff out, but they were describing this in the deleted scene. And it's one of those kinds of things like Sixth Sense, if you've watched Sixth Sense, where the clues are dropped here and there to tell you Hook is the Dark One. But then you don't actually realize it. And they ended up cutting that kind of thing, but they still left in the parts where at some point Hook actually steals that snow globe. And you don't realize the significance of why he grabs that snow globe, but plenty of people tweeted it. I think we even said something about what's up with the snow globe, and then just ended up having to dismiss it.
Yeah. I mean, I loved this commentary. First of all, I love Colin O'Donoghue's accent. But at one point they asked him about how he played his role darker, and he's like, "Oh, I just add more eyeliner." Like, it was just great. And he mentioned how he loved playing both sides of Hook in this episode because he was good and dark at the same time.
And along that same line, they asked something about how do you kind of keep this a secret from people, and he said, "I just put on more eyeliner to dazzle people so they don't ask the question."
It's all about the guy liner.
Yeah.
The guy liner. But I loved some of the things that we learned about it. So there's the scene with the squid ink. If you guys remember, he breaks in and he gets the squid ink, which is taped to the back of the picture frame. Mm-hmm. And they supposedly wrote this whole scene. They forgot that Hook only has one hand. So he's like, he had to put it in his head, like, how do I do this? Because I have to deflect this, grab this, throw this, and he's only got one hand. And I just thought that was hilarious.
How do you forget that Captain Hook has one hand?
Well, no, you're writing
his most defining attribute.
Right, but they're writing the scene, and it's like he takes the picture frame off the wall, and then he sees it taped to the back, which is across, leaning against, the frame's leaning against a couch or something like that. And then he has to grab something and grab the squid ink and throw it, and he's got to, turn his whole body and do all, contortion work to get to it, because they forgot, he can't just grab it with his left hand.
Thus the little thumb popping off and trying to do that, and his amazing speed at doing all of that, which he was able to do because he's a Dark One. Let's just pretend that.
But he didn't really know that at that point, did he? Now,
Hunter, can you adjust your microphone a little bit, because
what would you like me to do?
I'm getting a lot of pop sounds from it. So can you move it?
I can turn it sideways.
Well, just move it off axis, so it's still pointing at you, but it's out of the direction of your the path.
It's over here, and I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. The whole thing about Hooks being the Dark One, they mentioned in this that they did plan that from the beginning of this season. So it's nice to know that was always planned. But in our discussions of the episodes, we did reveal later on, though, that whole scene with the voicemail left from Merlin does actually have Hook in the background when Merlin says the Dark One is here. But we never caught that. No. However, it was filmed that way because they knew it would be Hook, and that was always in the plan, and they confirmed that in their commentary.
Colin said he was shocked that that us, the audience, didn't realize he was dark until that time. So, um, but one of the other funny comments from this commentary was that this is a show where you can play multiple death scenes and then still be alive.
Yeah.
Like that's not the exact word they said, but it's pretty much what it was. It was like this character can die like 4 times over, and oh, he's still a main character, not to worry.
Yeah, they would have to worry if dead is dead. But since dead isn't really dead, I guess they don't have to worry about that. Ouch.
But yeah, no, overall, I thought it was a really good commentary. I'm not a huge fan of them because a lot of times I've been in ones where they just go off on tangents and talk about things that were like, oh, do you remember having pizza that day? And that kind of stuff. But this one actually stuck with the episode and what was actually going on.
Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me, and I'll kind of bring up this idea again in our commentary about the next episode, next episode's commentary, so it's that meta, but they mentioned the onion rings, how when
Yes.
Emma brought onion rings to Zelina, that was not planned to be part of speeding up Zelina's pregnancy. So this is where Jeremy would say this thing about, oh, it was an unsupervised episode or something like that. Someone was unsupervised. But it kind of ended up being an accidental convenience for them to use for the idea of how Emma sped up the pregnancy. So this is the way it ended up working out. They had Emma give the onion rings to Zelina before they had figured out that they wanted Emma to speed up Zelina's pregnancy. But then they looked back and they could see, oh, she gave her onion rings. Let's pull that in and then make it seem like we were much smarter and we had this planned all along. And that's kind of why they threw in that line that Zelina said is, when the Savior gives you onion rings, don't accept them. That was to help make that connection for us. That was really kind of an accident, but they worked it out together nicely.
We find out that happens a lot.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you about the commentary on birth?
I know. Like I said, I liked it.
And speaking of birth, by the way, you recently gave birth, Hunter.
I did.
And your little one is a few months old now.
Yeah, he's 3 months old.
Looking really cute. We got to see a little bit of him before the podcast in our pre-show. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
And Jenny will be giving birth at some point during a hiatus, thankfully. We timed it that way. Yeah.
Just like I timed mine for the season finale.
Yeah, we cannot have the baby in the middle of the Once Upon a Time season. So we do whatever you need to do. Hold it or push it out early. But we've got exciting things coming in our family. And I know you've already got exciting things going on in your family.
Yeah.
Moving on to the third and final episode that has commentary on the disc. And the first thing that was disappointing about this is how they did the commentary for this episode. It's the finale episode. Only You and Untold Story are combined together on the disc as a single episode. But they did commentary for Only You. Only that first hour of it. And I would have much rather have heard commentary on the second hour, personally.
Yeah, if I had to choose, I probably would have chosen the second hour. It was really strange because the two writers who commented for Only You, David H. Goodman and Andrew Chambliss, they actually kind of talk for a few minutes into an untold story, but they're just telling you that there's no more commentary, so enjoy the episode. And I was like, but if you just kept going, it would be fine.
Yeah. No one would notice.
Right. Just keep talking. I'm sure you guys have things to say about the season finale.
Nonetheless, it was really good commentary and some really good things that they pulled out. David H. Goodman and Andrew Chambliss, the writers, and they said that this was their first time that they were being credited as writing an episode together. And Jacqueline, this was the episode that you chose to watch the commentary. And what were some of the things that stood out to you?
Yeah, well, actually, they ended up going up for a bit of filming, and they joked that they had squeezed into the back of Granny's kitchen to watch the opening scene, which is Robin's wake, and it's not comfortable in that kitchen at all, apparently. It's very tight. Um, they did mention that they ended up cutting quite a few scenes in the opening and rearranging a lot of the scenes. So the episode opens with Robin's wake, but it was originally supposed to open with Rumpel in the clock tower doing his thing with the Olympian crystal and then going to Emma and Hook walking down Main Street. But they decided to go with Regina because so much of the finale is inside her head and it's really her episode, so they wanted to be with Regina from the start.
Yeah. And they said that this episode, Only You, was 15 minutes overtime. And so they had to cut a lot and some really good stuff. We'll talk about some of the deleted scenes later that we got to see, but certainly good stuff they had to cut out from this. And that happens when you're limited to really about 43 minutes that an hour-long TV show gets.
Yeah, and along with that, they also talked quite a bit about how the production and producing the show dictates the story. So, for instance, there's a scene in the clock tower with everyone right after Rumpel sets off the Olympian crystal. And when they wrote the episode, it was originally supposed to be in the woods, but the producers came and asked to move it to the clock tower because it's an indoor stage set and they wouldn't have the actors outside in Steveston at night in the woods, which I guess is cheaper to be inside.
And the other scene was in the bug. It was supposed to be them outside rummaging through the car, and it was raining that day, so they had to film it inside the car.
Yep. And so sometimes that sort of happens with the producers and the writers. The other thing was we spent a lot of time in New York City for those two episodes, and the New York City streets, of course, are actually Vancouver, which is something we already knew, but it's a very controlled environment with people on walkies telling the taxis when they can drive, telling the extras when they're allowed to walk, so it's not just them kind of aimlessly going whenever they feel like it. And the streets were actually the same ones that the movie 50 Shades of Grey was using, which actually stars Jamie Dornan, who played Sheriff Graham for the first couple episodes of Once Upon a Time. So they had to squeeze in shooting once in between 50 Shades of Grey, which I thought was kind of funny.
I thought it would have been great if Graham made, like, not really a cameo, but, like, was in the background just walking down the street.
Right. When they said that, I was like, oh, you guys could have just gotten him to, like, walk past Henry and Violet, just like as a businessman, and we all would have chuckled.
When they were talking about the door that Zelina made that took everyone back to the Enchanted Forest, they hinted at something. I think they were just kind of throwing out thoughts, but it did open a door to an idea of something that could happen. They said that people were walking through, maybe people stayed behind, maybe some people snuck through the other direction, came through the door into Storybrooke and snuck in when everyone else was going out. That's an interesting idea.
Well, they left it open
6.
so they could write whatever they want.
Yeah. They actually specifically mentioned Guinevere as staying. They said, oh, who knows, maybe Guinevere stayed behind, which is interesting because the day that they were filming this, we had pictures of a body double dressed in Guinevere's clothing by the door, like ready to go through, so that way you could say Guinevere went through the door, even though we couldn't get the actress back. But we never actually saw her in the final airing of the episode, so I was like, oh, so maybe Guinevere did stay behind. Okay. Sorry, rearranging my notes.
That's okay.
Oh, and the reason they couldn't go to the second hour is because they didn't write it.
Yeah, but
I just looked that up, and since we were on.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely Adam and Eddie, but I mean, they're two of the writers who've been around since season 1. I'm sure they had something they could say. So They also talked a lot about what they wanted the finale to feel like. They wanted it to be just as big and epic as the season 3 and season 4 finale, but they didn't want to revisit the same concepts of alternate realities. So they decided to make it a character-focused episode devoted to Regina and Emma, which is why we spent so much time, especially in Only You, with those two characters. And they had a lot to say about the Regina and Emma scene in Neil's apartment, which I thought was really interesting. They were originally going to actually cut it down in editing, but because Lana Parrilla really nailed the entire thing and she was just so good, they decided to keep it all.
Yeah, and that is, there was another scene in there with Emma and Violet, one of the deleted scenes we'll talk about, and that's one that they had to cut completely in order to make more space for this because they felt this was so much more important.
Yeah, and they actually kind of just let Lana do her thing. The director, Romeo Tyrone, let Lana decide how she wanted to block the scene so that she wouldn't be constantly focusing on hitting her mark. She could just do what came naturally. And then Jennifer Morrison actually improvised some of Emma's reactions and things like handing the letter from Robin Hood that they found in Neil's apartment back to Regina. That was all Jennifer Morrison. She decided that that is something Emma would do. And then that scene actually was supposed to end with Mr. Gold listening outside and then coming in and apparently locking them up in chains. Which I thought
Okay.
which I thought was really weird, but they decided to just end it with Gold listening outside, which I think works a lot better.
Yeah. It's more menacing that way. And it, as they mentioned in the commentary, it raises more questions in your mind, wondering what's going to go on from here. It strings you along a bit more with the story.
Right. They also teased a few objects that were inserted into this episode that might come back up again. You guys mentioned the snow globe that was acting as a dark one detector, but Henry also talked about a snow globe that has an entire town trapped inside, and apparently Eddie and Adam got really, really excited about this idea when the writers talked about it in the room, and so we might come back to that someday.
Yes. And a feather.
The feather, yeah. So Roland gives Zelina a feather from one of Robin's arrows that she's supposed to give to Regina, and it's meant as an emotional moment, but the writers did say they will also maybe appear in season 6, and it might have some sort of magical significance.
The only magical feather I know about is the one that helps Dumbo fly.
Yes.
Yep.
And Dumbo is one of those classic Disney ones. And Jenny and I were talking about this recently, and we said, they've done almost all the classic original Disney movie characters and villains and heroes. But what about Dumbo?
Gonna make an elephant fly.
No, this part of the commentary is what was one of those moments where it makes you laugh, but also kind of makes you groan and makes you worried because they said, and I quote, "Down the road, we can always pay that off in some kind of really cool way that even at the time, we may not know. But after we do it, we can say we planned it the whole time and look really smart."
Yeah. I mean, I hear that line, and then I go back to them saying in the commentary for the episode Birth that Hook was planned as a dark one all along, and I'm like, was he really, though? Was he, guys?
Well, from the beginning of that season.
No, I know, but I still kind of question that because, I mean, we were all so flabbergasted, and, like, there were no hints.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's one of those things that I kind of go, I don't know if you guys really planned it.
It's the same thing that Aaron and I talked about with the commentary on Dark Swan, how they said they had planned for Emma to become a Dark One and approached her with that idea somewhere in the middle of season 4, and they had that idea. They said for a while. I wonder if they kind of got that idea from us or some of the other Once Upon a Time podcasters who, I think from season 1, we were theorizing that Emma would become a Dark One because I remember back then when Emma owed Hook, back then when Emma owed, let me say that again. Back then when Emma agreed to owe Mr. Gold a favor, back then we thought, what if that favor is that she's going to kill him, or she's going to take the Dark One power from him and become the Dark One? I kind of wonder if the writers got the idea of her becoming the Dark One from us. But as Jeremy, who's watching and listening right now, sick and in bed, get well, Jeremy, says there's no perfect show, but those, he said, there's no perfect show, but those are some that pack so much. Oh, okay. Sorry. I just removed that comment, Jeremy's comment, because that's out of context. I see what he's saying now.
So are you talking about Jeremy, or are we going on with...
We're going on.
Okay. So I also think it's really interesting that sometimes the writers have ideas that they do hold on to for many, many years until they finally get to use it. And Andrew Chambliss has really wanted to do what he called the blood bead shot for about 7 years, ever since he was working on the Vampire Diaries. So he finally got to have that shot when Regina pokes Emma to find Henry with a drop of her blood.
Yeah.
And then they got to use it again.
Yes, and the other commentator, David H. Goodman, joked that if it was up to Andrew Chambliss, they would have had it like 7 times. They would have had like an entire episode of nothing but that blood bead. They did talk about the casting of Hank Harris and Sam Witwer, who played Jekyll and Hyde, because they were cast very, very quickly. They had such great auditions, and Adam and Eddie had previously worked with Harris as well. And then that led into a bit of a discussion on how hard it is to play a villain on Once Upon a Time, because you do have to be larger than life, but you have to bring something kind of human to your performance, so that way we do feel sympathy for you and we just don't hate you outright. Which I think is true. And they talked about how Lana and Bobby have been doing it for 5 years, and so you kind of look to them as the models of really how to play a villain on this show.
Yeah, and the way that they've developed villains on this show have been really cool. And to see how sometimes villainry starts with one wrong decision or a wrong motive for something good, and then it just takes you down this path of darkness. As they say, evil isn't born, it's made.
Right. And speaking of making evil, I suppose, they did talk about the reveal of Jekyll and Hyde when the audience finally figures out who these two guys are. The writers really like to ramp up to it instead of flat out telling the audience. They think it's more fun that way. But they do put in lots of hints to get the audience thinking about who these guys could be. So there was a lot of steampunk, there was a lot of science-y kind of things, and the assistant in the episode is named after the butler from the actual novel.
I just liked how they said they tried for us to, they threw these Easter eggs in for us to figure out who these guys were, but we already knew.
Right. Yeah.
We already knew. Sorry,
for a
Daniel.
while.
We knew about those for a while.
Well, and some of those who have been spoiler-free in the chat room while we were watching the show, when certain people appeared, they said, I think that could be Jekyll and Hyde, or they did throw out certain ideas. And when someone said the name Poole, they said, wait a minute, that's Dr. Jekyll's butler from the book. And they did figure it out. Those who are connected really well with literature did figure it out very quickly, whereas other people, like me, took me a little bit longer.
It actually took us a while too, though, because we had 2 very bizarre casting calls, and every week Hunter and I were going, well, it could be these 2. Oh, well, maybe now it's these guys. And it actually took us a while to really settle on Jekyll and Hyde. So don't feel too bad. And then they did also talk about the land of untold stories, which is where Jekyll and Hyde are living, and they called it Disneyland, which I thought was adorable, because you have all these multiple lands within within the same realm. So you have Adventureland and I don't know, the Magical Kingdom,
Frontierland.
Frontierland, yeah. And in the land of untold stories, it's a lot of different little pockets of places within one big island, basically.
Yeah, and I can see all kinds of cool things that they can do for the upcoming season. And we've talked about this before, but I feel like it'll be a very much a science literature kind of season where we're getting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And we saw that page from one of the other storybooks that was Captain Nemo and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And it makes me think that maybe they'll bring back David Anders for some Frankenstein stuff because he fits in perfectly with that universe. And we've had that connection to the science fiction literature ever since season 2, when Henry hinted that there are other stories that aren't in his book and characters inside of Storybook that were from elsewhere. And they even talked about those pages of the book and the idea of having other books. And when they pitched that to Kitsis and Horowitz, because that was an idea that Chambliss and Goodwin had together, Goodman. That's an idea that Chambliss and Goodman had together. And when they shared that with Kitsis and Horowitz, Adam and Eddie loved the idea and just kind of ran with it and said, oh, yeah, and we could see this on the page and this, and there will be these kinds of things.
Yeah. So it'll be fun to see some very different stories in season 6 because we've been doing Disney predominantly for quite a while now. And then they also talked about Rumpel and his continuous, love versus power theme that's been going on with him for a couple seasons now. And they talked about when Rumpel has to choose between power and the person he loves, they refer to it as Eddie bait. Because apparently Eddie Kitsis gets really into this and he loves setting Rumpel up to have to make those choices. And they did say that in their opinion, Rumpel always chooses power. And in the scene where it has to choose really quickly between the crystal and the bell in a box, he does actually go for the crystal in their mind. And then he kind of changes his mind really quickly and goes back to Bell, but it's too late.
Mm-hmm. And they mentioned the music there that plays, that violin music that comes in.
I love that song. I agree with them. I love that music.
Yeah, it's a great... Mark Isham does a great job with each character having their own theme. And I kind of see that as, I don't know if it's necessarily like the steampunk world theme or if that's the Jekyll and Hyde theme. But whatever the case, that violin feel, it feels very... science fiction, like classic retro science fiction or steampunk science fiction light, and really fits the show, fits the characters. And I think that we could be in for some really fun music in season 6 as well.
I agree.
I can't wait to see who they bring in.
Yeah. And by the way, Matthew Paul pointed out that on Mark Isham's website, you can listen to the Jekyll and Hyde suite from the finale, so you can enjoy those strings over and over and over to your delight. We'll have that link in the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/255. So those are the only 3 episodes that have audio commentary with them, and I was hoping for Easter eggs. You remember back on season 1, there were those hidden bonuses. They haven't done that since season 1, and I was hoping for a hidden episode commentary on the discs, but the way that I check the discs is extremely thorough, and none of the other episodes have commentary on them, which is really unfortunate, but the commentary we got was good commentary. Like both of you said, it was very on topic and good, engaging conversation.
Yeah, if we had to get shorter or less commentary, I'm glad it was at least good. I really like hearing from the writers, especially non-Adam and Eddie writers, and nothing against those two, sorry. We hear from them so often that it's nice to hear from David or Andrew or, Jane. It's always nice to hear from those guys.
I like the combination of writers and one of the actors, because then you get to hear what's going on in the writer's mind as well as what's going on in the actor's mind as they're portraying that character, or some of the funny behind the scenes things that happen, or what they were thinking about it, or their own shock, or how they had to implement ideas but keep them secret still. Moving on to the deleted scenes, we had 18 deleted scenes on the Blu-ray version, and that's a couple more deleted scenes than the DVD version has. I felt like the deleted scenes here were more produced this season than they were in previous seasons. And that tells me either one of two things. One is that these were cut much later in the production, and that's certainly the case with a couple of these. It's definitely, there's no way that it could be otherwise. But the other thing that I wondered is, did they produce these scenes a little bit more for our benefit watching the deleted scenes?
I think they did. I mean, you could see there's a couple with the special effects where it says this special effect is to be added, or this one, or it was just really bad CGI on on the green screens.
Yeah, there were some really bad ones.
Really bad. Like they didn't produce anything; they just threw a background in. But I think there were some that was actually in the episode and they had to cut it, so those were the fully edited ones. But then I think they did it for us because everyone's expecting higher quality things nowadays.
Yeah, and what gives away that it's higher quality is the audio especially. You can hear everyone well, and many of them still have music in the background too. So I don't know if that music was originally planned or they added it in, but certainly they did what we call sweeten the audio so that it sounded more production level, as opposed to in the past, you hear some of the stage set or you hear the directors giving instructions or something like that. Here, it was much nicer and felt more canon, but
Yeah. I don't know. For the past few years, it's always been these are canon, and even 2 days before I think we recorded this, Adam actually answered the question and said that if it gets onto the DVD, they consider it canon. And then less than 24 hours later, he tweets out that, nope, they're not canon. We've changed our minds. Which, kind of a bummer, because I really like a lot of the deleted scenes. There are some scenes that, I really wish they could keep in the episode because they do such a nice job of letting the character develop or answering some plot questions, things that are inconsistent. So it's a bummer to me. So the only things they are now considering canon are the actual show that airs live when you see it on Sunday nights, and then they're still considering the books that have been written canon.
Now, there is one deleted scene I'm very glad is not canon, and we'll get to that in a moment. But to tell you what episodes have some deleted scenes here, we see deleted scenes from the following episodes: Souls of the Departed, Last Rites, Devil's Due, Siege Perilous, Broken Heart, Swan Song, Nimue, Only You, Labor of Love, The Price, Dreamcatcher, Firebird, and Sisters. So of these deleted scenes, some of our thoughts on them, there's this one that they labeled Another Option, and it's from Souls of the Departed. It shows the struggle for Regina, Robin, and Henry after Cora's ultimatum, which was, you leave or else Henry's going to pay for this. Henry Sr. is going to pay for this. It was a great conversation, I think, between Regina and Henry about Henry Sr. and why Henry was named Henry.
Yeah.
It also helped explain why Regina stayed. I mean, you kind of get why she stayed in the actual final version of the episode, but this goes into more detail, and it's this really beautiful scene between Regina and Henry Jr. that then is kind of mirrored with Henry Sr. and Regina later, right before he crosses over into the better place. It's one of those scenes that you're like, oh, why couldn't you keep this?
And you'll probably feel that about a lot of the scenes, because I found myself writing a lot in my notes. Heart to heart, heart to heart, heart to heart. There's a lot of heart to heart scenes that were deleted for the sake of time, but they're good scenes.
I thought it was cute watching the Robin, Regina, and Henry walk away as like a family, all holding hands. Like the way they panned out and they're walking towards the boat, and then they stop and they're like, no, we can't go. But I thought it was so sweet to see them as like a little family. because we know what's to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he died episodes later.
And he's very dead.
Extremely dead.
He's extremely dead. Not just a little.
Yeah.
Hold on, sorry, I'm laughing. That's kind of a joke with Hunter, John, and I. So, okay.
When after this next season, Daniel, you'll need to listen to the spoilers from the summer, and you'll understand it.
I listened up to when you guys started the spoilers, but I didn't listen to the spoilers from your Comic-Con episode. Yeah, I will definitely go back probably around Christmas time when most of the spoilers have already come to fruition.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched The Princess Bride?
Yes.
Okay, so like you know how mostly dead and almost dead and that, yeah. Everyone. We were talking about everyone, and Neil is very dead, and yes.
It was having John listening and commenting while we're trying to do spoilers is definitely an interesting experience. Thanks, John. Okay. One final little thing about this deleted scene for me. Rumple Snark. I always have to point out Rumple Snark. He gave this fantastic line. Apparently, I made a deal to find a pirate. And I was just like, I love you. Little imp. I love you.
Another scene I wanted to talk about was this one they called Blocked Magic. And it's Emma and Regina inside of Mary Margaret's underworld apartment. And it's when Regina is struggling with her magic. And they have, guess what, a heart-to-heart conversation about magic. And Regina's expressing some guilt over all the murders that she's committed. And at the same time, though, Emma helps try to bring her some encouragement, talking about how she saw Neil on the way down and reminds her of Daniel, and that conversation that then is kind of the springboard for Regina to then go find out, is Daniel down here?
I loved this deleted scene. I wish they had kept it.
Mm-hmm.
How many of those did you say that about?
Quite a few. I'm really bummed that they cut so many of these because so many of them are these really fantastic character moments, and sometimes the episodes are just so plot, plot, plot that we don't get these character moments, and I miss them.
And that's why it's plot, 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 because they had to cut all these out for time.
Yep.
Yeah, I know Jeremy is saying in the chat room right now, he said, I would love to see them cut plot twists and make the journey through the remaining plot points more interesting with more character depth and development. And others are agreeing with Jeremy too in the chat room.
Yeah, and this is one of them. You know, Regina and Emma have come so far since the season. No. Regina and Emma have come so far since the series began, and you know, this heart-to-heart that they're having kind of mirrors the one that they're going to end up having at the very end of the season. Once Robin's died and they are trying to find Henry, you know, you can never have too many Regina and Emma heart-to-hearts as far as I'm concerned, because the two actresses just play so well off each other, and they always end up talking about things that really get to the heart of the show or get to the heart of the characters, and it would be nice to see this stuff live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would love to see these put into the episodes. Like if you could watch a full episode of The Devil's Due with these scenes cut in where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's like the director's cut.
The director's cut, yeah.
Extended version. From the episode Siege Perilous was a scene called Eating Feelings, where it shows Snow White and Guinevere serving soup to all of the Camelodians that are there in Storybrooke. And it's another good, guess what, heart-to-heart, this time between Snow and Guinevere. And it made me realize, wow, Guinevere really hasn't had all that many good lines or good dialogue in the season. There was that really good scene that was very painful too. You know, the whole "come dance with your wife." That was a beautiful scene with her, but beautifully painful too. Here, it's a really good heart-to-heart between these two women talking about what they think Emma has done and how Guinevere does not hold Snow responsible and how Guinevere is concerned and compassionate about this. Great scene. Another great heart-to-heart that probably had to be cut for time, but one of those really long, good scenes too.
I just watching it, it was just like, wow, it looks like they're at the soup kitchen. Like I felt so bad for all the
Right.
people from Camelot. They're like they're getting the slop poured into the dishes. And I'm like, oh, there's like a soup kitchen. Can't you feed them at Granny's or something?
But their queen is serving them, so that kind of makes it an upper class soup kitchen.
Upper class soup kitchen.
From the episode Swan Song was a deleted scene called Enchantment, and this is the one that I feel like if they kept this in, oh boy, we would have hated this scene. And this is very, very uncanon because not only does it squeeze things in and also further amplify the fact that they squeezed in Hook's having to go on that errand and go kill his father, which was already quite uncanon. I went back and watched episode 209, Queen of Hearts, and I could see how from when Regina found Hook trying to get information out of Belle and then was about to kill Belle, and then Regina enchants Hook's hook and then sends Hook through the hat to find the Queen of Hearts, Cora, to kill her, pull her heart out, all of that stuff. Back in the episode Queen of Hearts, that all happens sequentially right
Yes.
then. In the episode Swan Song, that does not happen sequentially because Hook is sent on this errand to prove his loyalty and willingness to kill someone. A whole thing that I think even in our commentary back then, just I think we said felt unnecessary. But this deleted scene was really like a redo of that scene. So it was retroactive continuity. They were redoing a scene because back in 209, Queen of Hearts, we saw Regina enchant the hook for Hook. And we saw her tell Hook, this will allow you to take one person's heart, but only one. In this scene, enchantment from Swan Song, that was, I'm very thankful, deleted from the episode, we see Regina enchant the hook, but this time actually she drops potion on it, whereas back in 209 she just enchants it with her magic. And I really don't like it when they go back and redo a scene like that in order to try and squeeze things in and try and fit other stuff into the timeline when it really can't.
Yeah, watching this scene, I kept questioning, why did you even write this scene?
Mhm.
Like, why in some phase of editing did one of the writers not go, hey, this kind of massively screws up this episode that we did, 3 seasons ago?
Because they
It's-
didn't hire you.
Right, which, I mean, they really got to do at this point.
Hire the nerd. Isn't
Yeah.
that the hashtag?
Yep.
Uh-huh. But, yeah, and because in the episode Swan Song, like Regina and Hook meet in a field and she's wearing a completely different dress than the one when she catches him trying to kill Belle, and then they have this conversation, and then she's actually wearing that same dress in this deleted scene, that blue one that we know from Queen of Hearts. And I'm like, so how exactly does this work on a timeline at all? Because now everything from Queen of Hearts is different. So if there's one good thing coming out of the whole deleted scenes are no longer canon, it's this.
Yeah.
But I mean that's it really for me.
From the episode Nimue, we got some fun comedy that was unfortunately cut in a scene called Fork in the Past. And Merlin and Nimue are walking on the way, and they decide to stop by her village. So the visit to her village was not an original plan. It was just, hey, this is near my village. Let's go ahead and cut through there. And that's when they discovered that the village had been destroyed. But Merlin was talking about the sword, and he had visions. This is before the sword was created. Remember, this was only the Dark One power was from that chalice. And he said he had visions of the future of a legendary sword that will inspire books and movies.
And then she's like, what is this movies you're talking about? Like, you have to explain this to me.
So he could see that far into the future, into another realm. Although, yeah, that's hundreds of years, 500 years before our time. So it's still before movies were even a thought,
Right.
even if you ignore the fact that it's across realms.
Yes. It kind
But
of reminded me of that scene in episode 301 between Neil and Mulan, where Neil tells Mulan, "Oh, I really liked your movie," and she's just like, "What's a movie?"
Yeah. From the episode Only You was this beautiful scene called Loaded, in which Henry and Violet are in Neil's apartment and they're looking for the clues that would eventually lead them to the library. So that helps fill in that piece where I remember our discussing how did Henry figure this out that they needed to go to the library and how did he find these notes? It was from this thing that they were searching Neil's apartment. But it was this really beautiful scene between Henry and Violet.
Yeah. They found Neil's original copy of Only You, the one he probably played for Emma, and that's when I, had to walk away from my computer screen for a while.
There was a little glitch, I think, in this
Yeah.
episode or in this deleted scene. I kept playing it over and over again to make sure I heard it correctly, and maybe this is part of why they were inspired to delete it. But I think Violet accidentally called Henry Harry,
Harry.
unless she was kind
Harry
of
Potter.
saying hurry, but it just didn't quite fit. Maybe that was a
Well, if
little
they
glitch.
kept it in, they could have fixed that in editing. They must have her saying Henry at some point, so they can just clip out the one and put it on top of the other.
And the notes, by the way, that led to Neil's research and put some of that together, those were inside of one of those records.
Yeah, it was the Velvet Underground, I think.
Yeah. There was a cute scene from Devil's Due called Reconnecting. Hunter, what did you think of this scene?
Oh, I thought it was so sweet. You got watch Emma. She just reattaches the hook and make him back the way she, like the man that she fell in love with. Like, oh, there you are. Like you're all beaten up and cut up, and you look like death warmed over type thing. And here's your hook. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. And it's a very special thing because it helps us kind of understand a little bit of why maybe Hercules didn't give Hook his hand back, as I know you guys talked about from your Comic-Con discussion. Because
Zeus.
that hook is... Oh, I said Hercules.
You did, and I went, that's not within his powers. Like, what? In Greek mythology, no.
I'm not the Greek mythology expert here, so that's right. So, yeah, Zeus.
If it's from the Disney Hercules movie, I know it, but other than that, I don't.
So when Zeus, did that. But that hook is really part of what makes Hook Hook. And people who are madly in love with each other can appreciate those kinds of things. It's the flaws that you love about each other. And I mean, not love about each other, but it's those flaws that make that person special and different and are the things that make them them, kind of. And so Hook's hook is very iconic to him and even to their relationship. And the scene being called Reconnecting is kind of a double meaning with its Emma and Hook reconnecting, because this is after she's rescuing him, as well as she reconnects the hook into his arm. From the episode of Broken Heart is this scene called Safe and Cloud. Cute. That interesting. What do you think of this, Jacqueline?
I thought this scene was random, and it's another one of those scenes that I'm like, yeah, that's okay that you can cut.
Lancelot is in the woods and he sees the dark curse.
And he just like casually strolls away. Like he was
Oh,
he
it's
was
no
sent,
big deal.
right, like, oh, my entire kingdom's being engulfed in a, black doom and despair, but okay, I'm just gonna walk away. I'm like, what?
Well, he was on a mission to go find his mother, the Lady of the Lake, to try
Right,
and
so
get her
where
help.
is she? Why did he come back without her? And then again, why is he not freaking out as a knight who's in love with Guinevere as this black cloud is like literally engulfing the entirety of her kingdom?
He's just saying, "Oh, my turn." to go to Forgotten Character Island.
Right. After this scene, he gets in a boat and he paddles out to Forgotten Character Island, where he still is, I'm sure.
There's a scene called Savior Remains from the episode The Price, and it shows Regina looking inside of the sheriff's office looking for Emma. This is after Emma has just recently disappeared. This is the second episode of the season, I believe. And so they're still looking for Emma, and her red jacket is there on the sheriff's chair.
Yeah, it was kind of ominous. Like, where is she? Why doesn't she have her jacket with her?
A little bit iconic, too, because of what that red jacket represents and how the jacket is left behind there. And that she is no longer that person who wears the red jacket because she's now the Dark One, but she's also not even in that realm, even though they're looking all around for her. That's when she was actually in Enchanted Forest as the Dark One, struggling with all of that and eventually finding Merida and that stuff.
This was one of those half-edited, produced scenes. They show you Storybrooke without the tower. On top, without the clock tower, and so it's like insert clock tower here, like, but it still sounded right. So it was one of those not overproduced, but produced for TV, but never quite finished.
Yeah, produced enough for us to be able to enjoy it.
Yes.
From the episode Dreamcatcher, they made a scene. They call it Stunner Stew, but we're calling it the Jeremy Laughlin scene because they made this one for Jeremy Laughlin. We are absolutely positive of that.
Without a doubt, this is Jeremy's scene. I mean, this is like 5 years worth of them listening to the podcast and finally going, we need to make a scene for this guy. This is it.
So you've probably guessed by now what that scene is. Squid Ink. What else?
This is the weirdest scene I've ever seen. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah. The apprentice brings this little baby squid in to Merlin.
It's like this pink squid with like big black eyes. It's just like staring at you.
Yeah, it really looks like raw meat. There's this really cool, if you're ever in the Cincinnati area, go to this international grocery store. There are two of them in the greater Cincinnati area. Jenny and I love going to this place as even a date. It's an international market. It's called Jungle Jim's. Really big place. They have all kinds of crazy things from all across the world. Well, if you go to their meat section, you can find duck head, all packaged together, just like you find chicken breast and meat cuts and other things like that. Duck head, but it's really pink and packaged together and dry looking, and it looks like raw meat ready to be cooked. That's how this squid looked.
Yes, and he just like unrolls it from this cloth and is like, here, master, I found it.
And if this is how you make squid ink, I'm sorry,
gosh.
it is too easy for what kind of thing it does. Unless the squid is very hard to come by in the Enchanted Forest, and it's like there's like 2 of them in the entire ocean. Okay, that makes more sense. But it was too easy to make that potion.
And too easy to get the squid, especially for a child. Yes, he's the apprentice, the sorcerer's apprentice, but he was the one that went and got the squid and brought it back to Merlin. And remember back in season 3 and before then, when we learned about Squid Ink and that kind of thing, we saw in season 3 in Neverland how big of an ordeal it was for Rumple to get the squid ink. And here a little kid can go get a baby squid, apparently just down at the creek.
The squid in Neverland was like ginormous. It was this huge, huge creature that rose from the depths and had all these legs, and it was really creepy. And this is like this tiny little naked squid. I was like, really? And then to make squid ink, all you do, literally, is toss it into a pot.
Yeah. And then the squid ink comes out. Now, you know, one of the ways to possibly explain how this all works is this is Merlin we're talking about and his apprentice. Remember, the apprentice was able to make a door straight from the Enchanted Forest to New York City for the Snow Queen to walk through. And we've also seen the apprentice's wand be able to make the door that took everyone back to the Enchanted Forest. So maybe Merlin easily made a door for the apprentice, and he said, go through here. This is going to take you to a strange land called Neverland, but don't worry, no one lives there yet except this kind of shadow that's somewhere around there. But just go and find a baby squid, rip it off of its mother, and bring it back, and I'm going to throw it into a pot of boiling water so that I can try to rescue or tether the woman I love to this dagger and try this thing. So, yeah, this is Jeremy Laughlin's scene. But as ridiculous as the scene is, it makes more sense of one of the other strangest scenes we've seen before in Once Upon a Time. Remember when we saw Merlin calling the Dark One, and when Merlin then dropped the dagger and was turned into the tree by the Dark One, and the Dark One was just kind of wisping around and ghosting around and all of that, and then it froze. And it froze very awkwardly, like creepily. It frozen, reaching out to him perfectly still, like a mannequin frozen. You remember that whole awkward scene now? Now it makes sense because Nimue, who that Dark One was supposed to have been frozen from this squid ink. That's why Nimue couldn't move until Merlin dropped the dagger. Then Nimue could move and grab the dagger. That's when Nimue then imprisoned Merlin inside the tree.
I need to go watch that again.
Yeah, I did. And so it makes total sense now because of the squid ink scene. And if Jeremy Laughlin was dead right now, he would be rolling in his grave like this. But I'm sure what he's doing is he's digging a grave and rolling in it right now just so he can be rolling in a grave over the squid ink scene. Because really, yes, squid ink is the answer to why that scene was so awkward. How do you follow up that? Okay.
Well, good question.
Moving on, one of the other scenes that stood out to us is a scene called Unappetizing from Firebird when, what was his name?
Hades.
Yeah. Thank you.
Lord of the Underworld.
When Hades is in the diner, apparently waiting for Zelina, and the blind witch is there, and she's the waitress there in the diner in the underworld.
She wasn't acting very blind.
She like walks up to his table without any problems.
Exactly. That's like, it took me like 3 seconds to realize, like, that's the blind witch. Like, she didn't act it. Sorry.
Jacqueline, you have something to say here.
I do. I wasn't sure if you were going on.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, but she kind of pretty much offers herself. Like, why do you need Zelina when you have, me? And Hades' response was, I may be a god, but even I don't like burnt offerings. And, in Greek mythology, which I haven't gotten to say in like 4 months, I mean, that's basically, yes, you have tons and tons of sacrifices where they actually do throw the meat of animals like onto the fire, and this scent and flavoring is supposed to draw the gods. So I got a little bit of a chuckle out of that.
Yeah.
But it also kind of answers another one of those questions that I had when I was watching that episode, Firebird. So we see Hades appear in the street to Emma and the rest of the heroes, and he's got this scroll, and he's like, they have Zelina. And I remember going, but where did this scroll come from? How do you know any of this? And you see it. The scroll like magically appears on his dinner plate.
I'm not so sure that it was magically appearing there as much as maybe it was just underneath the thing that then the blind witch took back into the kitchen, and that's when he saw it, or it was on the other side of it.
That she grabbed without fumbling around for.
Right. But at least it does answer that whole, like, how did he realize that Pan and Rumpel had Zelina? How did he have this random scroll that he's then waving around to Emma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. From the episode Sisters was a scene called Writing Wrongs, and that's Writing, wrongs. And a nice little scene here with Henry kind of struggling over his power as the author and with the author's pen and the book. And a great conversation between Emma and Henry.
They should have kept this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those heart-to-heart character moments. So much of season 5B, one of the big complaints that I think we voiced a lot was the fact that Emma, she makes these kind of terrible decisions. These are very emotional decisions, but then there's almost no reflection. She's not given any time to breathe and to really think and reflect on what she's doing. And this is one of those scenes where she does open up about killing Cruella back in season 4B. And, you know, if I could have done it any other way to protect you, Henry, I would have. But I had to do what I had to do. And it's nice to see Emma kind of self-reflective when so much of 5B I felt like she wasn't doing that.
Mm-hmm. And she said something that was a very good quotation. She said this to Henry: "Never compromise your soul, not even from me." So these are the deleted scenes that stood out the most to us. There are several others, though, that we didn't talk about. So definitely get the DVD or Blu-ray to check it out for yourself. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but oncepodcast.com/season5, that's where you can go, and that's an internationalized link, so it should take you to the proper Amazon.com store for you. And it will take you to the Blu-rays by default, but you can switch over to the DVD version if that's what you prefer. But get your own copy. Send us a picture of you holding the DVD and what postcard that you got on it. You can tweet us at Once Podcast. The other thing we'd love to see you sending us a picture of is go to oncepodcast.com/t-shirts, especially before August 21st, 2016. Order one of the t-shirts there that you find. You might search the store and find some other t-shirt that you like even better too, but we've tried to hand select the best looking and most enjoyable Once Upon a Time t-shirts over there at oncepodcast.com/t-shirts. And send us a picture of you wearing your favorite t-shirt from that store, and that'll be a lot of fun, and we'd like to collect those as well. And remember, when you purchase through that store, that does support us too, so it's a fun way for you to get something great as well as to support the podcast as well. Moving on to the other special features that are on the disc, we have a special called Once Celebrates 100. Once Upon a Time had its 100th episode inside of season 5, and episode 100 is really big for many TV shows. They get syndication, they get special notoriety, all kinds of really good things happen when a TV show can make it to episode 100.
They had a big party.
Yeah.
They had a big viewing party.
Nice celebration. The president and vice president of ABC were there celebrating, and the new president of ABC is a big fan of Once Upon a Time. And they had this really neat poster in the background during this party that showed kind of a collage of the different iconic apples from Once Upon a Time. And we've seen that with the covers, what they've been doing for the disc covers for Once Upon a Time over the last few seasons, where we've seen the apple in different ways. Like in season 4, it was a frozen apple. In season 5, it's a black apple on the front cover of the DVD and Blu-ray. And I think that's an even more iconic image than what they've done in the past. And it might even be cool if they go back and update the older seasons to have that same iconic apple on the front, but different color style. But that was a really neat poster in the background. I want that poster.
Yeah, it was a cool poster.
I kind of wish, like, I liked how they did the thing with all the cast interviews. I kind of wish they had a lot of the guest stars there.
Yeah.
Because they were part of what made the 100 episode special.
Yeah. And I had wished that this little featurette had just been longer. I was really surprised at how short it was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was maybe only, 2.5 minutes?
Yeah.
I mean, for your 100th episode, I kind of expected, especially since we didn't get commentary for the 100th, I expected that this little featurette would really, show the fact that the show has reached 100 episodes and kind of a look back, a retrospective, if you will, of our show since 100 is a really big deal. And it was very short. There were only a few cast members who actually spoke, and it was maybe like a line or two from each of them.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer Morrison looked really pretty.
She did.
I guess because I was so used to seeing her as the dark one.
Yeah. In our chat room, Matthew Paul, one of the other forum moderators, by the way, pointed out that John Lasseter from Pixar was also at the party. And that makes sense because of their bringing Merida into Once Upon a Time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that they said is, I think it was Zelina or Rebecca Mader who said about Once Upon a Time, this show could go on for 100 years. I thought, no, please no. I don't want a podcast for 100 years about the same TV show.
They'd all be dead.
Yeah.
I mean, even Jared Gilmore, who's the youngest on the show, I mean, he's almost, 17? Do you really want to see a 117-year-old Henry running around?
Once upon a time, the next generation.
Being pushed around in a wheelchair all hunched over.
Right.
Back in my day when I became the author. But they did have a very pretty cake.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the cake. Whoever was their baker did a good job. I loved seeing the big storybook.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Jacqueline, did you want to mention that other thing?
I was kind of debating it because I can't tell if it's too mean-spirited.
Okay, let's just skip it then.
Okay.
Since you bring that up. Another feature they had is focusing on Merida in Storybrooke. That's the name of the feature. And it talks about Amy Manson, who plays the part of Merida. You get to see some behind the scenes with her becoming Merida. She talks about becoming Merida. One of the things that I thought was really cool with this is that they said that Merida's bow, arrows, and sword that she uses in the TV show are all modeled directly from Pixar's movie Brave. That's really cool. Down to the details, the patterns on each of them and such. Nice attention to detail there.
Merida's one of my favorite characters. Like, I love Brave. So when they brought her onto the show, I was so excited. So I'm glad she got her own little featurette. And it's actually a long one. It was, 8 minutes?
Yeah, it was kind of a long one.
But
I really like that when they were making the bow, arrow, and the sword and everything, they actually used some of the 3D printer to help make some of those bits and bobs, some of the decorations on it, I guess, so they could be as authentic as possible to the movie Brave.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that I learned from this is that her hair was a wig. I don't know why. I thought it was her real hair with, extensions put in or something. But it's a legit wig. They do a really good job at hiding that.
Mm-hmm. She had to get up really, really early in order to get that wig on. It was 5 o'clock in the morning when she and Megan Ori was there and kind of popped in as well. So it was really early when she and Megan rolled in.
Yeah.
I've done some production work, and I'm sorry, 5 is nice. That would be sleeping in for me. I've had 3 and 4 a.m. calls.
Speaking of Megan Ori, they had several little clips of Megan Ori, who plays Ruby, and Jamie Chung, who plays Mulan, and Amy Manson, Merida, together and doing some funny things together and some of their scenes that they shot together. And it looked like the three of them had a lot of fun. And they referred to them as kind of like Charlie's Angels of Once Upon a Time.
I hope we see them together again next season.
I like the way Jamie Chung referred to Merida and Mulan as they're both strong women fighting societal norms. Because I thought that fit really well with those two.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The next... Another feature is Tales from the Underworld. This is a dramatized thing. Tales from the Underworld, A Night with Cruella, and that's Knight. This was not quite what I expected it to be, but it was still fun. Has a special guest in it, and it's only
Yay!
that special guest and Cruella.
This was excellent. This alone is worth the price of the Blu-rays, guys. This is amazing. And Hunter and I had actually seen the first maybe only minute, if that, at Comic-Con, and we had talked a little bit about it on our Comic-Con review episode we did previously. And we finally got to see the whole thing, and I was like, this is easily the best thing they wrote for all of season 5. It's amazing.
And for those of you that didn't hear the spoilers, it's Spike.
Yeah. He was also Brainiac from Smallville. That's where I know him from because I didn't watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Did you watch Angel? Come on.
No.
He was on both.
Nope,
He was
sorry.
also in Torchwood for you British folks.
Oh, I only watched, I think, the first season of Torchwood.
But yeah, it's James Marsters, and the second he turns around, at Comic-Con, you kind of saw someone was shooting the audience, so you heard them all gasp when they revealed that it was James Marsters. And it was actually written by Jane Espenson, who is the Buffy writer.
Nice. It's very entertaining. Everything you know about Cruella and her great lines, it's all packed into this. It's only a few minutes long, but it's so much fun and just to watch over and over and laugh at. There is some interesting stuff to pull from this. Arthur is the ruler of the underworld, and he's been cleaning things up, and Cruella is all bummed about this. This is 50 years later.
I know, and then threw that in at the end of this whole thing. I'm like, wow, major time hop here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that means this is the farthest into the future we've ever seen, but we're only getting to see a view of the bar in the underworld, 2 characters, that's it. But apparently Arthur, 50 years later, is doing a good job with this. And a lot of funny lines from this. Great job on their part.
Yeah.
You're very soft. Can I skin you?
I'm the true hero.
Right.
Now, this
We need our
night,
dramatic readings. How many more do you want from us?
this
We're very
night,
good at them.
this knight was one of the ones from the Round Table, and he apparently tried to usurp Arthur's throne, and Arthur killed him, and that's why he's here in the underworld.
Yeah, that's Mordred from Arthurian mythology, and they got some of it right. Usually, in Arthurian mythology, he's actually Arthur's illegitimate son by Morgan Le Fay. And they have this really huge battle, the Battle of Camlan, in which Mordred does die. Arthur kills him, but he fatally wounds Arthur. So it's not just a matter of usurping Arthur's throne. There's a lot of ties there.
Sorry, I thought Mordred was a stepbrother.
No, son. I mean, the legends sometimes differ, but like the most common one is that he's Arthur's son, either by Morghese or Morgan Le Fay.
Okay.
Now, before we talk about the last thing that's a special on the discs, which is the bloopers, I want to tell you about how you can get our bloopers from the podcast episode, and that is by becoming a supporter and a hero to the podcast to support the podcast on a regular basis. And for this episode, I'd like to thank our supporters Lisa Slack, David Newland, Amy Catalier, DJ Firewolf, and our other heroes on Patreon. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We could not do it without you. During these summer months, even though we don't put out episodes as often, it still costs just about as much to host the podcast, and we have other expenses and other things that come up too, like buying the season pass from iTunes for the next season coming up, paying for the hosting for the website, and other upgrades and things that go on behind the scenes to keep the podcast running, keep everything online. But we can do that with your support. So thank you very much. You are a hero to the podcast. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And all of our heroes get access to our bloopers that we post from some of our recordings. And we've got some hilarious bloopers sometimes, and we've got some great stuff to share with you. So if you'd like to become a hero too and get access to our bloopers and know that you're a hero to the podcast, then go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. Lastly, the bloopers. The bloopers, I think, are tied with Tales from the Underworld for being the most entertaining thing on the disc.
They were a lot better this year than they have been in the recent past. I think it was either season 4 or season 3, although I think it was season 4, where we all kind of said, oh, these aren't that funny. But this year they were actually quite entertaining.
Yeah.
They were hilarious. I was cracking up the whole time.
They make it look so much fun to record Once Upon a Time, and the fun that the cast has with each other. I realize some of these cast members have been working together now for 5 years, so they are really close friends. In the case of Josh Dallas and Jennifer Goodwin, they're super close friends now, husband and wife, and mother and father to 2 kids now together. But a lot of fun that they have with each other, and to see their dynamic is great.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how often Colin messes up. There was a lot of Colin messing up, like right in a row, several moments of just Colin continuously messing up.
You know what it could be though? They could probably all mess up the exact same amount of times, but he's just more animated about when he messes up. Because some people could be like, "Oh wait, I gotta do that again." But he is hilarious when he does things when he messes up.
Oh yeah. I'm totally glad that I saw all that. It was funny.
Yeah. So they probably just put his in because he's more animated.
Mm-hmm.
I think my. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say I think my favorite one was Emily DeRaven with Belle. She's in Gold's shop and she is super pregnant at this time, and we didn't they did a really good job of hiding it, but she goes and turns and her belly runs into everything. I just thought it was hilarious.
They also have a thing that looked like it could have been a deleted scene, but I guess it was actually a blooper. But they're walking down the road, and David is there being the sheriff or one of the sheriffs of Storybrooke, and he pulls out his ticket book and writes a parking ticket to stick among the many other parking tickets on Cruella's car that has the for sale sign on it.
Yes.
I like the one where it's Josh and Victoria Smurfett who plays Cruella, and they're in the sheriff's station in the underworld, and it's supposed to be either David or James, because we know that David was pretending to be James at one point, and something messes up and Cruella's sliding off the desk, and you just hear her yell, "It's all going horribly wrong."
Yeah. You've got to watch these scenes and watch them over and over and over, because you'll appreciate the comedy, I think, more each time that you watch it. Anything else to say about the bloopers?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay. So to enjoy these bloopers, to enjoy the special Tales from the Underworld, Merida and Storybrooke, one celebrates Underworld, these deleted scenes, the commentaries, order your own copy of the DVD and Blu-ray set by going to oncepodcast.com/season 5. That link is also in the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/255, and that's where you can get the links, see a couple of the screenshots from some of these special things, and share this episode out with your friends too, and we would really appreciate it. That's one of the best ways that you can help the podcast, even if you can't afford to support the podcast financially. To share the podcast with other people means a lot to us. And one of the ways that you can help share it and help the podcast and help other people decide to listen to the podcast is by leaving a review for us in iTunes. And I've got a few reviews to thank. I've got a few reviewers to thank. First is Cantaloupe7 from the United States said, "I look forward to this podcast. So many times the hosts are saying exactly what I'm thinking. Funny and entertaining." Danielle G43 said, "Great podcast. They are friendly and informative, and I enjoy listening to it." And let me try and figure out how to pronounce this. It's been a while since I practiced this one. Mika Palmiri. I'm just going to say it quickly enough so it sounds like I'm confidently pronouncing it. And Mika Palmieri, let me try that again. And Mika Palmieri from Brazil said, a way to improve my experience with one scene, watch. And Mika Palmieri from Brazil said, a way to improve my experience with watching once. Gotta love this podcast. Great opinions every week with deep discussions and an amazing sense of humor throughout the whole thing. These guys have made my experience with Once Upon a Time bearable since the series plot has become weaker and weaker. Hope you can still do what you do best and help me and others put up with this show about hope. The hope that it comes back to be a great show. If only the producers would listen to this podcast.
There is hope, I'm hoping, from what they've said about this next season.
Yeah, thank you very much for those kind reviews. We did also receive a negative review, but we do appreciate, even though when it's negative, that you took the time to go and write something, to be honest, to share your honest opinions. We do also appreciate that. We really enjoy those 5-star reviews and those comments like those here. And if you're in one of those other 155 countries that has iTunes in it, don't worry. We have a tool that lets us see your reviews. So if you've been worried about writing a review and maybe we wouldn't see it because we're not in your country, don't worry. We do get to see it. So if you're in a different country, definitely review us in iTunes. The link for that is on the website and in the show notes at oncepodcast.com/255. We'd love to connect with you over this hiatus and to share some of our latest updates with you as things are breaking. So please follow us on Twitter at oncepodcast. And you can follow each of us individually on Twitter. I'm Daniel J. Lewis on Twitter at the Daniel J. Lewis. Yes, it's a new username now, so I'm no longer the ramen noodle. I'm now the Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Hunter Hathaway at Traveling Pixie.
And I'm Jacqueline. You can follow me on Twitter at punk_bunny_87.
Also connect with our other fellow co-host, Jeremy Laughlin, on Twitter at Fleegon. That's P-L...
P-H-L-E-G-O-N.
There's even a rhythm to it when he says it. Come on.
Yeah. Also connect with our fellow co-host, Jeremy Laughlin, on Twitter at Fleegon. That's P-H-L-E-G-O-N. And Aaron on Twitter at Aaron J. Cruz. Make sure that you order your t-shirts before the price goes up again, but they may go on sale some other day, but get one now. Send us your picture. Go to oncepodcast.com/t-shirts. That link and all of our other links are in the show notes for this episode. Please share it out. oncepodcast.com/255. We may talk to you again before the season starts, but if not, get ready for Once Upon a Time coming back on the last Sunday of September 25th. Until then, have a happy ever after, and thanks for listening. Once Podcast is a proud member of Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Big thanks to our supporters for being heroes to this episode of the podcast. If you'd like to be a hero too and get access to our bloopers and other fun stuff, then please go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. Okay, we're done.
Ooh.
Ooh. And I smell cookies downstairs.
Aw, I want cookies.
I'm trying to stay away from cookies because I'm trying to do a low-carb diet.
That's nonsense.
Yeah.
I did that while I was pregnant, and I don't want to do that again.
I love my carbs.
I had the gestational diabetes, so I wasn't allowed to. So.
Okay. Jacqueline. 255. How did we have 3 episodes in between this and the spoilers?
Because there was the unboxing was 1.
3?
Uh-huh.
No.
There was the
255,
unboxing
right?
Your episode was 254.
Oh, that one's disappeared, but 252 is still in Dropbox. Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, wait, what did we do in between all of this? Like, it's been pretty quiet, hasn't it?
Now, what I'll do for everyone else watching live, I will play the clip from Aaron and I when we talk about the episode, The Dark Swan, and our commentary for that. It's long, it's 25 minutes. We talked quite a bit about that. There was some really good stuff in that. I think it was probably the best commentary of the three commentaries on the disc. I'm not saying the best commentary. It's much better than Jacqueline's or Hunter's commentary. But so we did talk a bit more. There was more to theorize, more to discuss, I think, on that one. So that one's a bit longer. That's why I didn't play that earlier, but I will play that for you in a moment. But I do want to actually re-record my intro and something else too to add to the beginning. So Hunter and Jacqueline, thank you very much for joining us. You're welcome to stick around if you want to listen to these commentaries.
I hear my little boy crying.
She's also got cookies, so you know.
I got cookies.
Yeah.
All right, then All right, I'll leave and I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Bye.
All right, so let me then re-record my intro. So John, I'm re-recording this intro. Please replace the one at the beginning with this one because I didn't like how that first one went. So it will go like this. You're listening to Once, episode 255, 5th season DVD and Blu-ray review. Welcome back to another episode of Once, the unofficial podcast for ABC's TV show Once Upon a Time. Okay, put that in. I also want to try and fit this in somewhere near the beginning. So try and see if you can squeeze this in when I mention the 3rd season. And if you'd like to order your own copy of the complete 5th season on DVD or Blu-ray, then go to oncepodcast.com/season 3. No, season 5. And if you'd like to order your own copy of the complete 5th season on DVD or Blu-ray, then go to oncepodcast.com/season5. That's an internationalized link that will take you to the appropriate iTunes. No. And if you'd like to order your own copy of the complete 5th season on DVD or Blu-ray, then go to oncepodcast.com/season5. That's a special internationalized link, so it should take you to the proper Amazon store for your country in case you're in Canada or the United Kingdom or somewhere else. And you can order the DVD or the Blu-ray through that link. And when you do, it helps support the podcast as well. That link is also in the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/255. All right, that's it. So now I'm going to play the review with Aaron and I. And I know the music has been kind of loud. Once it was loud, I realized I shouldn't change that later because of the way the volume stuff is adjusted. But so this won't be as loud of a recording. But here comes the commentary from Aaron and I. This is about 25 minutes long. I might just say goodnight when this is finished. But here we go. Enjoy. So Aaron, what did you think of the commentary for The Dark Swan overall?
I really liked this commentary. I love whenever Adam and Eddie are commentating. I really enjoy kind of their perspective of things. And then I always love the perspective of bringing an actor in with them because they kind of get to play off each other just as somebody who's in the episode physically there while it's being filmed versus, you know, the people in the writer's room that are kind of making the decisions about it.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree on that. There's a big dynamic difference between those commentaries that are only the writers or the producers and those commentaries that include the cast. What I like about it is what you get from the cast is what you can't necessarily get from the writers and producers. From the cast, you hear from them the experience behind what we're seeing on the screen and their thinking that often went into things and how they decided to act a particular thing or some of their favorite moments. And it brings a bit more personality to the people that we see on the screen, because we don't really see Kitsis, Horowitz, and all of the other writers and producers on screen on a regular basis. But we do see the cast. And so to hear from them gives it, I think, a more personal third dimension.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed hearing from Jennifer Morrison specifically for this episode. That was a very appropriate choice. And like you said, like she got to talk about, her acting style and how she creates these different personas of herself as Emma Swan, as the Dark One, and kind of her method of becoming the Dark One just in her own acting and how that works. And she's such a talented actress, and we do get to hear stuff like this from her and from the others, just about kind of her style of acting. But I really enjoyed hearing that and hearing how she pieces it in timeline wise. And it just kind of shows how talented she is to be able to kind of do that and play these different roles all in one episode.
This is the commentary you should listen to if you want to know more about that whole Emma becoming the Dark One and some of the thought that went into that and the challenges they faced and the talent that was brought out from Jennifer Morrison, who plays Emma. Now, let's get into some of our finer details on what stood out to us about this commentary. And this is somewhat chronological, but we may be all over the place with our commentary on the commentary. We're that kind of meta. Hey, I'm the guy who runs a podcast about podcasting. I'm familiar with meta things. But McKenna Grace is the little girl who played young Emma at the beginning of the episode Dark Swan. And a really crazy connection here was that Jennifer Morrison, who plays Emma, and McKenna Grace, who played young Emma, both of them acted in the upcoming sequel to a horror movie. And that movie coming out in 2017 is Amityville: The Awakening. And Jennifer Morrison mentioned that when she met McKenna Grace, she had said something about, oh, you could play a younger version of me. And that was before Once Upon a Time. And here, McKenna Grace plays a younger version of Jennifer Morrison. Perfect connection.
Yeah, that was a cute little information nugget that they left us that we probably wouldn't have connected. Most of the kid actors that they seem to hire in Once Upon a Time are Canadian, and like the ones that are just kind of in an episode or two. And I think it's just like labor laws about filming in Canada say that you have to audition a certain number of Canadian people for roles. But she's American, and I'm wondering if it's just because of how much they look alike that they were like, okay, we got to get this kid. I did watch the trailer for Amityville, and it seems terrifying also. When she shared that information on the commentary, I watched the trailer just to see if they acted together, which it didn't seem like they maybe acted together, but they did appear together.
When we see that young Emma, she's in that theater watching The Sword in the Stone. And Jennifer Morrison said that that was one of her favorite movies growing up.
I know she's talked about in interviews before how she had a very Disney family, so it doesn't really surprise me. But I don't even think I've seen that movie.
I had a very Disney family too, but my Disney family was a bit more strict on movies that had a little bit darker magic in it. So Sword in the Stone was actually one of those movies that I didn't see fully until the last couple years when Jenny and I watched it together.
I bought it when we found out that Excalibur was going to be a thing in this season, but I just didn't get around to watching it yet. So nice. I still haven't seen it.
And speaking of Excalibur, one of the tidbits that came out in the commentary from Eddie Kitsis was he said, we always loved the idea that two things would fit together and be broken. It kind of sounds like this Excalibur and dagger idea being connected, or the dagger being part of something bigger, was always sort of an idea somewhere in the back of their minds, but was not necessarily there from the beginning to say, yeah, the dagger is part of Excalibur.
It makes a lot of sense that it would have been an idea. I can't remember the first time they foreshadowed Excalibur in this series, but I think it was a while before we actually got this amount of Camelot that they had actually foreshadowed Excalibur. Do you recall?
Excalibur was mentioned in a previous episode when David had made a fake Excalibur to try and convince Snow that she was the rightful ruler of the kingdom. And that's when Rumpel said, nope, if that was the real Excalibur, I wouldn't be able to do this. And then he just poofed it away or destroyed it.
Oh, right. Well, and maybe that was foreshadowing in more ways than one, because if that was the real Excalibur, it would somehow be connected to his dagger.
I believe there was some other reference to Excalibur at some point, like a side reference,
Yeah,
that they referred to the sword in the stone or Excalibur or something. But this season was certainly more focused on Excalibur.
for sure.
Now, the man who played King Arthur, Liam Garrigan, was originally someone that they wanted to use as Captain Hook's brother, but he wasn't available at that time. So they were then able to get him for King Arthur, and I think that he fits the King Arthur part a lot more. And it was really funny to hear what they were saying about how all of the other cast kind of like had a kind of crush on
Yeah.
Liam Garrigan.
I liked when they were summing up the scene at the very end where all the Camelonians come in and they say he wore the armor well, and they were saying that they were like, look at Jennifer's face, she's just thinking, I'll make you a mixed tape. I talked about that yesterday because people of the next generation probably don't even know what a mixed tape is anymore. But that was a cute little reference to how nice and manly and how good they all looked in the armor when they all rode in on their horses, and everybody's face was kind of just like, oh, it's Excalibur, it's Camelot.
Mm-hmm. Now, Emma's being the Dark One was discussed a whole lot in this episode, and the struggles that she faced as an actress becoming the Dark One, and also as well as some of the joy in that. And they said that Emma becoming the Dark One was planned for, quote, a long time, unquote. But then they say things that seem to pin it toward more like just the beginning of season 4 is when they were thinking about Emma being the Dark One, or at least that's when they approached Jennifer Morrison about becoming the Dark One.
Yeah, they said that it's been foreshadowed a lot, just the whole idea of Emma kind of fighting the darkness. But they did say season 4, and then I think they kind of almost, Jennifer maybe even retracted that and said, oh, I think it was earlier, or somebody did. But yeah, they did talk about it, and they talked about, you know, the wardrobe plans and how long those took and the design of the costume. And it was a really interesting discussion. And apparently Jennifer Morrison collaborated a lot with Eduardo Castro on the Dark One costume, which is very interesting. He always makes such beautiful pieces, but it makes sense that if it's something she's going to be spending a lot of time in, that she's kind of working with him on that.
Mm. And they referred to Emma as kind of like they created a new Disney princess. And with her becoming the Dark Swan, it was like they created a new Disney villain as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of the only time that that's really happened in this series. They've had a lot of villains that aren't necessarily straight from Disney, but they are villains that we know, and they have a different spin on them. Like, I would say the Dark One is their villain, but him being Rumpelstiltskin is kind of the spin. But this is the first time I think they've really come up with a 100% original princess and villain.
And speaking of Rumpelstiltskin, Bobby Carlyle, who plays Rumpelstiltskin, and Jennifer Morrison worked together a lot because of all of those interactions between Emma and the Dark One in her mind. And Jennifer said that she really enjoyed getting to work that much with Bobby Carlyle. And he's a fun guy. And they did some great work together in that acting and the pairing and all of that journey.
I enjoy any kind of one-on-one scene with Bobby Carlyle. He just seems to have great chemistry with every single actor, and the one-on-one scenes are always just, the banter is always the best. And the other thing I found interesting just about that whole journey she went on was, I never thought of this, but apparently whenever they're aiming a bow at somebody, it's a CGI arrow, which makes a lot of sense, but I've never really thought about that. Like, oh, that could be dangerous.
Yeah, once they said that, I now see it totally. I can see all of the little flaws, or maybe not even necessarily flaws, but perfections that make it obvious that the arrow is computer generated. And I'm going to see that now everywhere. I'll always be looking, is that bow and arrow real or is that fake?
I definitely started like watching the arrows instead of the rest of the scene as soon as they kind of drew our attention to that.
They did talk a little bit about Amy Manson becoming Merida in this, but there's that whole extra on the season 5 Blu-ray and DVDs all about Merida. But they did bring out some interesting notes here about her playing the part of Merida in Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, they said that Pixar was very willing to kind of talk to them about it and share things. And
they did certainly pick a perfect actress for that. And they mentioned how not only did she look the part, but her personality fit the part as well, that kind of fiery personality.
Yeah, she was perfect for this role. I really enjoyed her as Merida. I love that movie Brave. I enjoy the new type of Disney woman that Disney has started to create with all of the newer kind of movies. So Brave was one of the first ones that actually had, this kind of kick butt, strong-willed female character. And then, they always bring it back to the themes of Disney, of like love and family and all of that. But I really enjoyed that they brought her into Once Upon a Time and cast such a perfect person for her.
Now, I know you didn't quite agree with something that they said in regards to Merida and Emma's relationship with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've, watched the season through and through, but they were saying that they loved how Merida was the only person to never really forgive Emma, that everyone else is kind of just like, okay, let's go to Granny's and, we'll have hot cocoa with cinnamon, but that Merida maybe never kind of gave her trust back to Emma. And I didn't interpret that when we were watching live or even during this commentary. There was not any kind of acting or anything that made me kind of think, oh, she still doesn't trust her at all. Like she seemed to really be genuine in wanting her to succeed and to fight the darkness and in her forgiveness and acceptance of the apology. So I just found that interesting that was their take versus what we're seeing and interpreting as the audience.
I think when you look at the storyline, that could make sense because in The Enchanted Forest and in Camelot, Emma's interaction with Merida was always negative, and Merida was seeing Dark One coming out and all of that. And then back in Storybrooke, when Emma brought Merida to try and turn Rumpelstiltskin brave, Emma was controlling Merida, ripped out her heart, all of this stuff. So I could see every interaction that Merida has had with Emma has been negative. So it's difficult to just suddenly be, oh yeah, we're buddy-buddy. I understand all of that. It was a mistake. It was all a problem. I could understand that looking at the overall storyline, but I agree with you. That's not necessarily how it felt watching the individual episodes.
Yeah, it just seemed like she was on board with everybody else. Like, let's help Emma or I'm just going to go my own way and you guys do your thing.
They talked a little bit about what the darkness and being the Dark One does to a person and how they tried to bring that out in Jennifer Morrison's portrayal of Emma becoming the Dark One. And they said the darkness and being the Dark One is like a magnifying glass that reveals who you really are. And they say that's the way it's been with all of the characters, even with Hook, because they mentioned that with Hook, it brought out his vengeful side because he was very much driven by his thirst for revenge, and that's what the darkness brought out in him. And they also said the darkness kind of provides some freedom. In a way, many times before, we've talked about darkness being like drugs or like alcohol to the point of drunkenness, and how with alcohol, a drunkard does not change who they are. Their drunkenness brings out what's already in them. The same thing with if we're just in horrible situations, relationships, complications, when we're driven to stressful extremes, it doesn't really change who we are, but it reveals what's already been in us and perhaps gives a particular kind of freedom for some of that nastiness that's already been in us to come out. And that's what the darkness is like here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that discussion. Like I think we could have an entire philosophy and religion class kind of on this topic, but I found it really interesting. I've just completed yoga teacher training and I had to finish. We had about 50 hours of philosophy class and it went into all of, the ancient kind of yoga philosophy. And a lot of it was about how like there's this idea that that people really only want to acknowledge their light and they really want to suppress their shadow, and that we can't really come to like a place of peace unless we acknowledge that there is both darkness and light in us, and that we need to see both of those things before we can effectively take our place and kind of encompass the light, like make sure that the light is what we are living for until we can actually acknowledge that there's also darkness. And I would say even with Christian kind of philosophy and background and religion, that would be true as well. If you look at that kind of background, I think you would be able to speak more to that than I can. But it's just, I find it really interesting that they do tend to bring in these really philosophical, deep kind of discussion points with this show, which I think is one of the reasons why we can podcast about it and do a 2-hour episode about a 45-minute TV show. I love how they always swirl around the darkness and the light and that whole notion. It was a great sort of mini discussion that they had there.
And speaking of swirling around, the weather in Vancouver, where they film most of the outdoor stuff with Once Upon a Time, is often completely unpredictable and it changes frequently. And Jennifer Morrison said something interesting. She said, the more miserable it is, the more beautiful it looks.
That's very true of Vancouver and that area. I was there for a month last year. That's when I got to see them film, and it rained every single day. But my pictures from that month are still beautiful and stunning, and it just brings out the color and the vibrance of the nature that surrounds that city and that whole area.
And they also mentioned that Camelot, the castle of Camelot, was filmed in Alberta.
Yeah, I was wondering if they were meaning that they actually filmed there or if they just kind of did a shot and then CGI'd the castle. Like, I wonder if they meant that the actors went there to film that part, or if it was just, they needed a really pretty mountain to put this big fake castle on.
They shared an interesting tidbit about cutting someone's hand off. This was the episode where Zelina was in the prison underneath the hospital, and Hook comes to try and let her out so that they can take everyone to wherever Emma is. But that's when Zelina cut her hand off in order to get that cuff off of her, so then she could use magic to put her hand back on. Well, they shared that they originally wanted Hook to cut his hand off back in the episode 404, The Apprentice, when Hook went to Rumpelstiltskin and got his hand back because he wanted to be able to embrace Emma with both hands. And because of the struggles that came out in that episode where Hook thought that the hand was influencing his dark side and all of that misunderstanding, they had originally planned for Hook to cut his hand off because of that struggle. But ABC thought that that was too gruesome for that episode, and I guess their approach to that was a bit too gruesome. But now they've been allowed to do it with Zelina. I guess because of the way that they did it, that's what made it more acceptable this time, as opposed to last time it was Hook's solution to a problem, whereas this time it was Zelina cut it off and put it right back on, and it's not necessarily as gruesome, I guess.
Yeah, and I remember the first time I watched that scene with Zelina, and I just it really, really emphasized her crazy, which is what they really needed to do at that time. So, crazy but smart. That was such a smart thing to do. And yeah, I didn't find it overly gruesome, and I get that it's a family show, so maybe the way they had pitched it earlier was a little too harsh for 8:00 on a Sunday night.
Yeah. What do you think about how they talked about Emma and Regina's relationship in this episode?
I love that they've acknowledged how far that relationship has come. They basically said in the pilot, Regina was trying to get Emma to leave town, and now here Emma is giving Regina this control over her. And Jennifer Morrison made a really good point that in her real life, she has a lot of girlfriends that she would literally trust with her life, but that's not often reflected in TV, and that often women are adversaries and they stay adversaries, and that it's really nice to see women kind of go from enemy into friends. Well, frenemy for a while, and then I would say now it's a genuine friendship. It's true. I kind of reflected on the shows that I watch, and even though there have been some really amazing, powerful moments between female friendships, it's often that they end up backstabbing each other, and it just doesn't always portray women in a positive light. So I do get what they're doing, and I do really like it.
And Kitsis and Horowitz pointed out in the commentary that Emma is really the one who brought all of these people together and helped start these friendships and is kind of the glue that keeps them together, as you could see at the beginning of season 5, where Emma's gone and then everyone kind of starts to fall apart. Very contrasted with the beginning of season 3 when they go to Neverland and Emma is like, we need a pirate. We need the queen. We need the hero. We all need to work together. And she brought them together like that.
Yeah, she has definitely been the glue that's kind of held everyone together. And also just kind of related to that, like they described her as the pop of color, which they meant very like kind of physically, but it's also true, you know, that's the same thing. She's kind of the one that brings kind of the color into the darkness and brings all of that. They were talking about how Jennifer Morrison wants to wear black sometimes and Emma always has to be the one that wears color. And that's been since the pilot when the yellow bug was the first thing rolling into the dark, dreary town of Storybrooke. And that's very symbolic of what and who Emma is as the savior, as the light kind of coming into this situation. And she has definitely acted as somebody that's pulling and keeping everybody together in various ways, in various types of relationships. But Henry a little bit too, I would say. They didn't give Henry the credit, I think, for starting that process with wanting Emma to get there and to kind of fix everything. But
And Emma is the bringer of happy endings, which in their commentary, they said a happy ending isn't necessarily the end. It's kind of just a step along the journey. Well, thank you, Erin, for joining me for this portion of our podcast and being able to pre-record this with me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, that's our show for the night. Thank you very much for joining us. Go to oncepodcast.com to subscribe if you're not already.